Picture this,
Oh,
a
thank you so
bustling
much. I really
emergency room on a
appreciate your help.
Saturday afternoon. Families waiting anxiously, a little girl crying in her mother's
Come on, you
arms,
guys.
an
We have
elderly
to do
man
something
clutching his
about this.
chest. And then Karen Reynolds storms
I'm
through
really
those
worried
automatic
about the
doors like she
results.
owns the
It'll be
place.
okay. We'll know
Bleached
soon.
blonde hair bouncing, leopard print
I'm
blouse
afraid the
practically
results are
screaming
not
for
what we had
attention.
hoped for.
Her voice
Oh,
already
no.
3
What does
decibels
that
too
mean?
loud before she even reaches the triage desk. Jessica Martinez, a nurse who'd been working double shifts all week, looked up from her computer just as Karen slapped her designer handbag on the counter and announced with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her entire life. "I need to see a doctor immediately. I have a terrible migraine and I absolutely cannot wait." Now, before we dive into what happened next, let me paint you the full picture of this moment. Because what Karen didn't know, what she couldn't possibly see through her self-absorbed tunnel vision, was that every single person in that waiting room had been there longer than her, some for hours, and every single one of them had actual medical emergencies that made her headache look like a minor inconvenience. Jessica, who'd seen it all in her 8 years as an ER nurse, took a deep breath and explained with the patience of a saint that the emergency room operates on a triage system, meaning the most critical patients get seen first, and that Karen would need to check in, provide her information, and wait her turn like everyone else. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to Rayan Review 2.0 for more real, emotional HOA stories. But Karen wasn't having any of it. Her face flushed that particular shade of coral that matched her lipstick, and she leaned forward, her gold bangles clanking against the counter as she hissed, "Do you know who I am? I'm on the hospital board's fundraising committee. I've donated thousands of dollars to this facility, and I demand to be seen right now." The waiting room went silent. Every eye turned toward this woman who genuinely believed her bank account could buy her way past a child with a broken arm and an elderly stroke victim. Jessica's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady, professional. "Ma'am, I understand you're uncomfortable, but we have patients with life-threatening conditions who must be prioritized. If you'd like to be evaluated, please take a seat and fill out this form." That's when Karen made her fatal mistake. She reached across the partition, tried to grab Jessica's badge, and shouted, "I want your name. I'm reporting you. I'll have you fired by Monday." The commotion drew Dr. Patricia Chen from the back, her white coat swishing as she approached with the calm authority of someone who'd dealt with entitled patients for decades. She placed a gentle hand on Jessica's shoulder, looked Karen directly in the eyes through her rectangular glasses, and said in a voice that somehow managed to be both soft and absolutely final, "Ma'am, threatening my staff is unacceptable, and if you continue this behavior, I'll have security escort you from the premises. Now, if you genuinely need medical attention, you'll check in properly and wait your turn. If this is truly an emergency, you'll be seen accordingly. But I need to tell you something. There's a 7-year-old girl in room 3 who fell off her bike and may have a concussion. There's a man in his 60s showing signs of a heart attack. And there's a pregnant woman in active labor who came in right before you. So when you tell me you have a migraine and demand to cut the line, what you're really telling me is that your headache is more important than potentially saving someone's life." The color drained from Karen's face as the reality of her actions began to sink in, and for just a moment, you could see the shame flickering behind those heavily mascaraed eyes. If you're feeling this story, hit that like button and share this video to support Rayan Review 2.0. But here's where it gets interesting, because Karen's husband Tom had been parking the car this whole time. And when he walked through those doors and saw his wife in the middle of her tantrum, his shoulders literally sagged with the weight of embarrassed recognition. This wasn't the first time, not even close. He rushed over, apologizing profusely to everyone within earshot, gently taking Karen's arm and trying to guide her to the waiting area, whispering urgently, "Please, honey, not here, not now. These people are just doing their jobs." But Karen jerked her arm away. Her pride still too wounded to accept that she might be wrong, and she played her final card. "Fine, I'll just go to a real hospital where they actually care about their patients." Dr. Chen, in a move that absolutely stunned everyone watching, simply nodded and said, "That's your choice, ma'am. St. Luke's is about 15 minutes north. County General is 20 minutes south. I hope you find the care you're looking for. But let me be clear. Every emergency room in this city operates on the same triage system, because that's not customer service, that's medical ethics. It's the difference between healthcare and a drive-through window. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the quiet whimper of that little girl in her mother's arms. And something in that sound seemed to crack Karen's armor just a little bit more. She stood there, frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish, all her bluster and entitlement deflating like a punctured balloon. Tom, bless his heart, filled out the triage forms himself while Karen sat in the corner chair. Arms crossed, staring at the floor, probably running through every possible version of this story she'd tell her friends later to make herself look like the victim. Want to hear more life-changing HOA tales every week? Subscribe to Rayan Review 2.0 and never miss the next twist. Here's what happened next, and this is the part that really matters. After about 45 minutes, when the more critical patients had been stabilized and moved to treatment rooms, Jessica called Karen's name for her assessment. Karen walked up to that triage station with her head down, and when Jessica asked her to describe her symptoms, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I've had this headache for 3 days. The light hurts my eyes. And I've been vomiting every morning." Jessica's professional training kicked in immediately, and within 5 minutes of asking detailed questions, she realized that Karen wasn't just being dramatic about a tension headache. She was showing signs of a potential brain aneurysm or severe hypertension. Suddenly, Karen went from entitled nuisance to actual patient, and Jessica, despite having every reason to hold a grudge, treated her with the exact same compassion and urgency she'd shown every other patient that day. Dr. Chen ordered an immediate CT scan, and Tom sat in that waiting room with tears streaming down his face, probably thinking about all the times he'd watched his wife treat service workers like they were beneath her, all the times he'd made excuses or looked the other way. The scan came back showing dangerously high blood pressure and early warning signs that could have led to a stroke within days if left untreated. Karen's migraine was her body's desperate alarm system, and if she'd gone home in a huff instead of waiting, she might not have woken up next week. When Dr. Chen delivered the news, explaining that Karen would need to be admitted for monitoring and treatment, Karen's carefully constructed walls finally crumbled completely. She looked at Jessica, really looked at her for the first time, saw the dark circles under her eyes from those double shifts, saw the compassion in her face despite everything, and she whispered, "I'm sorry. You were just trying to help people, and I made it about me. I could have. If you hadn't, thank you." Jessica simply nodded, squeezed her hand, and said, "That's what we're here for. Everyone who walks through those doors, no matter what." 3 days later, after Karen was stabilized and discharged with a treatment plan that probably saved her life, she returned to that ER during Jessica's shift, not with complaints or demands, but with a handwritten letter and a genuine apology. She stood in that same waiting room where she'd thrown her tantrum and apologized to every person she could find who'd witnessed it. And while some accepted graciously and others just nodded politely, what mattered was that she did it. Tom told Jessica later that his wife had started seeing a therapist to work on her entitlement issues, that the health scare had forced her to confront some ugly truths about how she treated people, especially those in service positions. Dr. Chen, in a quiet moment, told her staff, "This is why we do what we do, not just to treat bodies, but sometimes, if we're lucky, to help people see themselves clearly enough to change." Thanks for watching Rayan Review 2.0, where every story teaches a lesson. Like, share, and subscribe for more emotional neighborhood dramas. The moral of Karen's story isn't just about emergency room etiquette or the danger of entitled behavior. It's about how close we all are to needing help from the very people we might look down on. How a medical crisis can strip away our pretenses and force us to see our own vulnerability. And how sometimes the greatest gift healthcare workers give us isn't just medical treatment, but the mirror they hold up to our worst behaviors with the grace to still help us anyway. Karen learned that day that cutting in line at an ER isn't just rude. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of what emergency care means. It's not first come, first served. It's most critical first saved, and the people who make those decisions do so with training, compassion, and the heavy knowledge that every choice could mean the difference between life and death. So the next time you're frustrated in a waiting room, remember that the person behind that desk isn't trying to inconvenience you. They're literally trying to save lives. And your patience might just be the most important contribution you can make to someone else's survival.